Steve, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning, John.
Um, we've got a little news on our budget and on our sales tax projections. It's my understanding that in the last couple of days we've received one of the checks through the state from our sales tax revenues, and that check, it's my understanding, is one of the larger checks during the year because it includes the last quarter of '08, which would include the Christmas sales, right?
That's correct.
So historically, our the March check has been pretty determinative due to its general size, and also we're about halfway through our fiscal year, right?
That's correct. The March check represents 5 months worth of 5 of the 12 months.
Uh, it sounds like you have some kind of mixed news. Tell me the amount of that March check in comparison with how much was budgeted.
The March check, well, the budget amount for the March was about $1,240,000, and we were shy of hitting that mark by about $160,000. That represents about a 13% decrease in what we actually got versus what we had budgeted for that month. And March is one of those 4 months out of the 12 that we project $1 million plus in sales tax revenue.
So when you combine this most recent news with some of the news from prior months, have you been able to project and advise the City Council what type of sales tax income shortfall that you're planning on for the
Well,
year? Yeah.
sure. Based on the first 5 months worth of actual sales tax revenue, if you annualize that trend for the remaining 7 months, it would translate into about an 8.4% decrease, or about $850,000. Now, that is an annualized amount and is somewhat skewed by the huge decline in the March sales tax check. So assuming that we have that same kind of decline for the remaining 7 months, then it could be as high as 8% or $850,000. I'm not sure it's going to come in that short for the rest of the year, but we have put together some plans to cover that shortfall.
Now, just to keep things in perspective, the general fund, kind of I call it the housekeeping account for the city, where we finance police and fire and a lot of road maintenance and our IT systems and all those normal city type functions. That general fund, the sales tax revenues, uh, what part of that general fund is funded by sales tax as opposed to other income sources?
The sales tax revenue funds about 36% to 40% of the total general fund budget.
Are the other components of the general fund budget, or the other income items, are you seeing similar decreases, or are those remaining stable?
Well, the second largest revenue source for the general fund is the franchise utility tax. That is coming in above the budget projection so far this year. The third largest is property tax, which is right on where we thought we would be at this time of the year. We've received probably 95 to 96% of all the property tax money we're going to get. We've already gotten, which translates into exactly where we thought we'd be for the year. So the second and the third largest revenue sources are at or above where we thought we'd be.
Okay, so that 8.4% projected decrease in sales tax revenue would translate maybe into an overall general fund budget shortfall of, what do you think, 3.5%, 4%?
Probably about 4%.
Okay. Now, that's kind of the bad news. It's my understanding that as you've looked at the budget to date and some things from the last year's budget, that you've got maybe some things to counterbalance that and to keep us in good shape. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Several items. The first one is the fuel budget. We projected that we would probably use about 283,000 gallons of fuel this year, based on the last 3 or 4 years' trends. Obviously, we used a great deal of fuel last year due to the winter storm and the ice storm and everything else. So we moved up our projected gallons usage. We also projected that the cost per gallon would be at about $2.55 a gallon. We are paying substantially less than that through the first 5 months of this fiscal year. So I am projecting that we could probably save as much as $340,000 from our original fuel budget. So that's a major step in addressing this sales tax revenue. The second one is thanks to the council approving the auditor position, we are in the process of doing a number of audits, some on hotels, some on cell phone companies, and the like. As a result of those audits, we are finding that we are able to generate some additional revenue from these cell phone audits, both in last year's money and also current year. So that will add at least $125,000 plus. We have several audits scheduled for the remainder of this fiscal year, which will add some more money. The third item is the sale of fire trucks. We estimated when we entered into our lease agreement on the new fire trucks that we would be selling 8 fire trucks. The first 5 that we sold went into last fiscal year's revenue. We received 1 check in January. We'll get another check this week, which we probably will hit the $290,000 mark with 1 fire truck yet to sell. Those funds were not originally budgeted for in this year, so that's another amount of money that will go toward the sales tax revenue shortfall. So when you take these 3 major items alone, they will more than cover the projected shortfall in sales tax revenue for the general fund budget this year.
Just to sum up then, if the sales tax deficits are offset by some of those other sources of revenue, what do you project as being a fund balance that we could maintain at the city level for this fiscal year?
I would think that we will, by October 31st, which is our year end, we will have at least a 16.2% budget fund balance, if not more, due to the results of operations of this year.
And in terms of accepted standards in the industry, is 16.2, is that high, low, or about what your recommendation would be to keep the fund balance at?
I would say that that's somewhere in the middle. 16% is a healthy fund balance. We've had higher fund balances in the past, but also there are many municipalities that have less than that, and I think that puts them at risk funding their operations. So I would say 16% is in the middle. Maybe we might want to strive for a little higher, but we're certainly in a good range.
So it looks like for this fiscal year, due to some of these offsets, we're going to be okay. Of course, the council will start working on next year's budget. That'll be a little more interesting because some of these sales tax reductions that we've been able to absorb this year, we're going to have to anticipate those in next year's budget, and that'll be an interesting process. But that's something the council's going to have to be working on with your assistance.
We've really started the budget process for 2010 already, trying to put some preliminary numbers together based on the actuals that we have, and certainly sales tax revenue being as you pointed out, the highest revenue stream. We'll probably have to take a look at not increasing what we have projected for this year, certainly no more than that for next year, maybe holding the same, but that will also then restrict our funding for our general fund operations.
Okay. Well, Steve, thanks for getting together for a few minutes this morning. Good luck, and we appreciate all you guys do to keep us on track.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anytime.
Take care.
All right. Thanks, John.